Hi and welcome. It's the thing. Hopefully everyone can see the picture up there.
Good afternoon, evening.
Can you see the comments all right?
Yeah, so far, yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
That's pretty groovy. Carnism, eh? What's that? That's a belief system, I believe.
Yeah. Essentially it is a belief system. It's even the originator pushes it as such, but it's the belief of eating or consuming flesh. It doesn't really talk about any other aspect of anything else, really. So, I mean, it's at best a vegetarian concept.
But useful when you're arguing with meat eaters. Joanna says, "Plant lives matter."
Hi, Joe, you all right?
I'm doing what everybody says you're not supposed to do, which is put an earbud in my ear.
Fair enough, fair enough. But yeah, just thought it'd be an interesting topic for discussion, because it's not something you see talked about too often. You probably see the words used quite often, either carnism or speciesism, or a combination of the pair. But probably this particular conversation doesn't happen all too often.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, I don't see them being intermixed. Those two ideas. It's usually the first, isn't it? And that's all.
I think, yeah, for the most part, you're probably right. But at the same time, I've seen plenty of people use them interchangeably in the sense that carnists show their speciesism. I've seen that sentence written, and without naming names, certain creators that have the word carnism in their title, for example, will talk about speciesism and understand what that concept is. So it's not a common thing, but it does happen. But usually if they talk about carnism, they don't talk about speciesism. That is normally how it works.
So sorry to hear that, Joanna, about the hospital. They can be fairly tiring places, can't they?
You didn't need to be here. No. If you don't feel up to it or anything like that, don't feel like you have to turn up for our TikTok lives or anything like that. It's certainly not important. Your health is far more important.
Oh, I don't know about that, Andy.
Yeah, that's true. They're mandatory viewing.
I've got my dressing gown on because it's so nippy here in Dublin.
Yeah, well, actually, it's not too bad here. We've had a really cold weekend, and there was snow in various parts. We didn't have any, but there was snow all over the place. But no, actually, I'd say since about Monday evening, it has warmed up quite a bit. It's just wet, but not cold anymore, luckily.
Oh, actually, to be fair, it's 8 degrees now, so eight degrees with heavy rain apparently.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I would say it is here. It's certainly warmer than it was over the weekend, and it's just wet.
It's funny, for some people, when I used to be on AR Zone, I used to talk about the temperature, and they were in Australia, the person who organised it, they just couldn't believe the low numbers because it's kind of like anything below 30 was a disaster for them or
Yeah,
something.
I know. Yeah, it's like middle of winter, and everyone's still walking around in shorts and flip flops, but it's a bit cloudy.
Well, they always thought it was a bit of a tragedy if they had to put long trousers on, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I can remember that from many years ago when I used to have quite a lot of interest in cricket, and I'd go to Edgbaston quite a lot, and you could always tell like the players from the West Indies or any part of Asia. It'd be like a lovely day in July, and every English person in the crowd has got their shirt off, and you've
Yeah,
got
yeah.
the Asian players that they've got the undersleeve, long sleeve jackets on underneath their whites, because to them it's still not very warm.
Yeah, funny you should say that because when I was a projectionist, one of the jobs I had was at the Odeon in Romford, which was the biggest Odeon outside of London, and we got a junior or I don't know, some projectionist anyway called Jim came over from South Africa, right? And it was the same for that. Even in the summer, he would well in the winter he sometimes have like 7 jumpers on.
Yeah.
seven layers, and he just couldn't believe it. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I suppose it would be different for some of the players that had lived over here for some time, but the ones that just like played for a county for the summer, yeah, they just weren't climatized at all, and you could see that they were struggling even on what we in England would consider lovely warm days. To them, it was just like, well, this is pretty chilly actually.
yeah, a bit nippy,
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah,
going, what?
in fact, I can't remember. I think his name was something Rafiq. I think it might have been Mohammed Rafiq, but there was a Bangladeshi player that played for Worcester that wore gloves, actually. And I'm talking about like not cricket gloves, winter, woolly sort of winter
Oh,
gloves. Yeah, during the summer because he was cold.
yeah, Edgbaston, that's Birmingham, isn't it?
Yeah, Edgbaston is Birmingham. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I used to live in Birmingham.
Yeah, so Edgbaston would be, it's only about 25 minutes down the road. So I'm not sure whereabouts in Birmingham you were. But Edgbaston is kind of in between where I am and Birmingham city centre.
Yeah, I think it was something like Washwood Heath or something. I can't remember now, but
Oh,
yeah.
there's quite a few. There's quite a few heaths because there's Smallwood Heath. I don't know them all to be fair, but okay. So
No,
that's
my son was born there in 1977, and it was interesting because my wife at the time, she kind of missed out first stage labour and went straight into second. So it was really kind of quick and easy for her to give birth. And by the time the ambulance arrived, it was too late to make it to the hospital. So the ambulance people said we're going to have to do it ourselves. And so I was sent down into the ambulance and told to listen out for a code word and then answer the radio or something. And then there was a lot of screaming and shouting, and I had to go back up to the bedroom and swap. And so I was there for the birth of my son. And then the only thing we did wrong, because I think it was the ambulance people's first time too, was that we hadn't thought to put the heating on in the room. So when the baby came out, he immediately went blue.
Oh no.
Yeah, so it was kind of like straight over to the hospital to be put into an incubator. But the
Yeah.
thing I remember was that we had this house across from a factory, and when we came out with the baby, all the workers were lined up across the road clapping.
Oh, that's nice.
It's weird.
Yeah, that's quite. I suppose that doesn't happen all the time, though. That's quite an experience.
Yeah, 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 I suppose it is.
But yeah, so that's basically the other side of Birmingham. I'm kind of south side towards Worcester, basically.
Yeah, it was pretty run down when we were there. Like I say,
Still is,
77.
Summary. Yeah, still is.
Yeah. Well, I expect. I think the Vegan Society was there for a bit, wasn't it, in Birmingham? I think.
I think it was. Well, obviously it was Watson was in Leicester, but yeah, I think it was in Sturchley, which is not too far away at all, really.
Okay. Yeah. 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 And I remember the bull ring and all that kind of stuff, and that was pretty run down at the time.
It's one of those places. I suppose it's very similar to London. That like to the outsiders, everywhere is just Birmingham, and like that's the area that covers everything. But actually, like Birmingham's not that big a place as it is. It's got lots of other smaller places outside of it. But
In
everyone just kind
Birmingham.
of singles them together. I can remember that from like the dog rescue days. Someone would be like, "Oh, this is dog transport that's literally on your doorstep. Where is it? Warsaw. Right, that's an hour away. There's
Yeah.
nowhere
Well, that's a different city, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but like but it would be Birmingham in their mind, all the same thing.
Oh, I see. Right.
And
Okay.
I suppose I've got that similar ignorance when it comes to London. It doesn't matter whether it's north, south, east, west. London is London to me. I don't think about how far away that might be from one place to the other. You just kind of like congregate them all together.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's what happens. I suppose it's the same with London and Greater London and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah, just replying to Joe's comment. That's absolutely fine. I was going to say, in fairness, with the live the way that it's potentially structured tonight, hopefully nobody needs to be banned or muted unless someone comes in and they're, I don't know, homophobic, racist, whatever, and they clearly need removing. Just allow them to just speak. They're no threat to us in any way, shape, or form. And I would imagine there's going to be a couple of vegans in the comments throughout. So And
Yeah,
hello and welcome, everyone.
let a bit of rudeness, I suppose.
Yeah, as long as they're not being derogatory to anyone or like that, I don't mind if they're slagging off veganism. We're used to it; it's fine, and it just kind of like pushes the chat for other people as well. So as long as they're not being rude to anyone, just whatever.
Jadzia, apologies if that's not the right pronunciation. Roger, I'm happy to see you making more videos on TikTok. I always have, but I suppose in the last year, I suppose I've really, I used to do. Remember, Andy, when there was a kind of like a rule that you used to kind of do 3 a day or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's still in place. I've been trying to post at least absolute one a day, even if it's just like a meme or a picture or something. And then other days I've posted more than that. But I think you do need to be fairly consistent. Yeah, I absolutely did notice a surge of that had like completely vanished. People that were used to be every video that I'd post would be on it, and now I don't see any of those people anymore at all. I don't see their content, and they clearly don't see mine.
So what's the latest etiquette on TikTok, people?
I,
People
yeah,
in the chat will
don't
know.
know. Happy to be advised.
Yeah, is it 3 a day or 1 a day or what?
I'm not actually sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm certainly going to continue posting at least once a day, and I know definitely the more lives you do, the more that the rest of your channel gets pushed.
Now, there's an intriguing comment. I am recently vegan, but not through my own choice, unfortunately.
Well, that is interesting. Please elaborate. I'm quite interested to hear that. 2 seconds. I'm just going to grab a drink.
Because obviously, we want people to make it their own choice, because otherwise it ain't going to work. We think. I just let Ronnie know that we're on.
Oh, is he potentially going to join us?
I don't know. I just thought I'd let him know.
Oh, okay.
I've had a right old day with a vegan YouTuber.
All right.
I probably won't name, but he keeps calling me names like I think he called me a nobody, and he called me a piece of shit the other day. And so I've invited him onto my channel, but it looks like he won't come.
Oh.
He was on the Sky Show today, but he made a real twit of himself because he clearly didn't know the history of the movement. People were in the comments screaming at him, what about Leslie Cross and all that? And somebody said, what about Tom Reagan? So Sky said, yeah, what about Tom Reagan? And he said, oh, Peter Singer is terrible. And he clearly didn't know.
Yeah. I mean, well, he probably wouldn't have been that brash about it, but Reagan would probably agree.
Agree with what?
That Peter Singer is terrible. I mean,
yeah, no, yeah.
That's you're not making a point there. You're just sharing a view that everybody has.
But he also said, oh, he was the one who wrote the first animal rights book, and I was thinking no, and Sky agreed, and I'm thinking, come on, people can't have such a terrible grasp of the movement.
But they do. That's the problem. They do have such a terrible grasp of the movement if they have any interest in anything before about 15 years ago at all.
Ronnie said he'll try and join for a while. Jennifer, hello, welcome.
Okay. In that case, we can delay our sort of subjective topic until Ronnie joins, and we'll just chat until then.
We've got a subject and a topic, haven't we? Ooh.
Well, I mean, essentially just what's on in the background. Yeah, I just thought it'd be interesting to see, because I mean, we've already got 10, 11 people in here. I don't know how many of those are already vegan, but it was just interesting to see what people's thoughts are about when we actually lay this out and think, is this a beneficial word to use going forward? Because I mean, I'll wait until we get into it, but personally, no, for a couple of reasons.
Yeah, potentially dangerous, I think, but yeah. But we'll see, because obviously I think a lot of people say that they've kind of veganized this vegetarian concept, don't they? But as you said, we'll probably wait for Ronnie, I think.
Yeah, I can change the banner. It's just that that's potentially what we were going to talk about, but I can change it to something else.
Why?
I don't think Jennifer can read it.
Again,
Yeah, I don't know whether it's the layout. Let me see if I can change the layout first and see if that makes any difference.
I think something wrong with your wind up phone, Jennifer.
Can you read it now?
Well, yeah. Well, actually, that screen is better for me because it hasn't got all those little boxes with the pluses signs and stuff.
Okay. Well, that's because that fits. Okay, so that fits perfectly for me.
Still cut off according to Jadzia. So I think we're going to have to make these things and just use the top quadrant of a square. You know what I mean?
Everyone else can see it now, apparently. I don't know.
I can see the banner perfectly. Okay, so I wonder what it is then.
I don't know. It must be that certain phone screens are obviously slightly different dimensions. So some it fits fine, which are obviously similar to mine,
I mean,
and there's,
everybody's watching this in portrait and not landscape, aren't they?
as far as I'm aware, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the majority can see it now. That's the main thing. So everyone kind of probably knows what we're talking about now, or we're potentially going to talk about. But yeah, so just before sort of anything happens, obviously carnism is a term that most people are aware of. It's what a lot of people use as a description of non-vegans, i.e., carnists. Although Melanie Joy herself, who came up with the term and the sort of
Yeah, she doesn't like that, does
she
she?
doesn't like the carnist part, does she?
No,
Which
no.
I'm not sure how she didn't inevitably see that would happen. Ronnie's here anyway. But yeah, so she's not a big fan of that because obviously it always gets used as
I
like a
think
derogatory insult.
yeah, it's interesting. Somebody was it you who said why did you come up with this? Somebody put a post saying why did they come up with carnism when the speciesism was already there? And I think it's often to do with academia because there was a guy called David Steibel, which I'm sure you probably won't be aware of, but he was a vegan. Um, but he came up with this kind of concept called juggernaut, right? And a lot of academics do that. They try to get a concept attached to them. And so that means that whenever it's used, there's usually then a reference to them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I can understand that. The silly thing is, like, if she'd have probably asked, she could have just had speciesism. Like, I don't think there would have been any real claim to it.
No, but it wouldn't be hers then. See, I mean, Richard Ryder is the one with
Yeah, but
speech.
most people don't know who Richard Ryder is. So if Mel Joy would have just popped up and said, "Oh, speciesism, yeah, I invented that," most people would go, "Yeah, Mel." They wouldn't check it.
Well, I think our generation would be going, excuse me. Hi,
Yeah,
Ronnie.
yeah. But the problem is, as per, nobody listens when you say that sort of stuff because, like, that's the problem now. But it's very sad that she kind of regressed it as much as she has. But yeah, it is definitely the fact that she's got that attachment. That's her concept. That's her branding.
Maybe she will say that she's also veganized it. Are you there, Ronnie?
I am indeed, yes. Yes.
I would
Um,
definitely argue that. Hey, Ronnie,
the,
you're right.
yeah, I was just going to say the last time I kind of saw anything by Melanie Joy was probably about 10, 12 years ago, and I've not really experienced anything from her
And what was that?
since then.
A
So,
TED talk or something, or what?
I sorry,
What was that you saw 10 years ago?
it was at there was like a nearby vegan group to me. They were showing a film
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right.
featuring
You
her.
went to one of her trainings, didn't you? You went to one of them, didn't you?
If it's 10 years, it could
It
well have
was
been
it
a
was
TED
in Wolver,
talk.
it was in it was in Wolverhampton, and it was a Quaker meeting hall there where their group there used to have meetings, and they were putting on a they were showing a film of Melanie Joyce speaking. somewhere or other, but I can't remember much about it, to be quite honest.
Yeah, well, 10 years ago, she would have still been very, very vegetarian. I think she's kind of veganized the concept quite a lot, and so she will talk. And that clip that you posted, Andy, featuring Earthling Ed, she now does talk about eggs and dairy, but she almost exclusively talks about what she called meat in those days.
Yeah, true, but she talks about eggs and dairy in the commercial term, which I think that she was potentially always against. The caveat she mentions in her book is more like backyard, isn't it? In the same way that Singer says that I do think that it is possible to kind of exploit kindly. Yeah, I think that's the key difference. When she's talking to Ed that time, she's still talking about like factory farming. Like,
Yeah, well, this is the insidious thing, really, because you've got kind of Singer, you've got Joy, and then you've got Leonard, and they're all in the same kind of area where there's some type of animal use which is not too bad. We can put up with that, to the extent that Leonard is now saying that we can have a symbiotic relationship with other animals, which basically translates to animal welfareism, really.
yeah,
It's like free range animal welfareism, isn't it?
pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, so
But yes, the symbiosis in the fact that they essentially pay rent.
it's very the mystery for me, and I don't know whether any of you can answer this, is why it's so popular in the vegan movement.
I think the word's popular because I think a lot of vegans think it means the same as speciesism, and they prefer the sound of carnism because it's kind of, you call someone a carnist.
Yeah,
It's
there's a bit of an
sounds
edge to it,
you
isn't
know
there,
what
really?
you're talking about. But if you call them a carnist, even if they don't
Yes.
understand it, they know it's a derogatory word.
Yeah,
They know
you're a
insulting them.
carnist, you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's why I think a lot of vegans just think it means the same thing, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's both a description and an insult definitely is what
Yeah.
makes it that way.
I
I mean,
mean,
species is also, but yeah, most people don't know what that means. They don't have the kind of connection to it, so you don't get a reaction, which is what people want.
well, yeah. I mean, for me, one of the reasons why speciesist is better is because it's similar to racist and sexist. It's in that category of terms, isn't it? Whereas carnist isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, as you said
Yeah,
before,
I mean,
Andy,
I've had
it's
this discussion
ironic
with
that
many people before. Sorry, carry on.
I was just saying, as you were saying before, Andy, the irony is that the person who came up with the word carnism doesn't like the word carnist.
No, she doesn't like the most popular part of the word, really. The
Yeah,
fact that
I
she
know,
uses an
yeah.
insult. That is very true. But I've had this conversation with people before, and like, even when you ask non-vegans, if you say the word carnism or carnist to them, what's the first thing you think about? And they say meat, food. They're never going to think about horse racing. They're never going to think about a zoo. They're never going to think about use in any way, shape, or form, because the association is
Or
food.
vivisection, anything. I
No,
mean, like,
none of those things will ever come into the equation. No. And even if you listen to Mel talk about it, it still doesn't factor in any of those things. It's just the consumption of flesh.
but if you go to her own site, it kind of defines carnism as very kind of meat orientated.
Yeah.
So it's all about animal flesh. She used to start her talks in the same way. She used to talk about being at a dinner, and that you enjoyed the dinner, and then you asked the host what the recipe was, and then the host said, "Oh, I used 3 pounds of golden Labrador," right? So it was always about flesh,
Yeah.
right from the start.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we always try and constantly tell people that veganism isn't just a diet, and we're already fighting against numerous kind of roadblocks that push people towards that kind of way of thinking. And I just think carnism is another great example that does that. The vegans don't realize that every time they're using it, all they're doing is pushing the idea that veganism is a diet, because it's all centered around food. All we care about is who you're eating.
Yeah, has Ronnie gone?
Oh yeah, I didn't even notice.
I'm sorry, did he just refer to eating dog? Yeah, there was when the person who came up with the concept of carnism used to talk about it, she would begin her talks by describing how if everybody had a great meal and everybody thought that was wonderful, and then the host said, "Actually, you've just eaten dog," it would change people's perception of it. That's why it was, right?
Yeah, and in the same way that obviously we've seen and there's video evidence of the opposite way around, where you've got the sausage expert who suddenly, was embarrassed because he'd been fooled, or you've got the video that's on my page where the guy was eating the vegan chicken wings and enjoying them until he read the box, and all of a sudden they were disgusting. It's a mental shift. It's got nothing to do with the actual taste. It's all in your mind. It's kind of
Yeah,
like that bias, that I don't know, that prejudice is what's making the decision.
yeah. Andy, do you follow that? I think it's like TikTok and everywhere else. It's this thing where they kind of pretend that they're marketing dog meat.
Yeah, you're on about Elwood's, or yeah, Elwood's.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And the most recent one was this. Apparently, some vegans smashed up their thing. Was that all staged then? Do you know?
I haven't actually watched the video. I saw a couple of the clips as I was scrolling of some guy like smashing a sign down, but I never actually watched it to find out what was going on.
Okay, well, as far as I know, the person doing the violence was supposed to be a vegan. So, but I think it might just be all again staged because,
Right. Okay.
yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, it's kind of satire, really, isn't it?
Their idea is satire. Yeah, I mean, the clip that I saw, I didn't realise that he was a vegan. I just thought he was a guy that got upset because he was a
Oh, well,
street
God's
sweeper.
vegan girl saying he wasn't vegan, but you see, what I'm trying to get at is, was that video staged or was that real?
I'm not sure. I mean,
No.
quite a lot of their stuff obviously is staged, because that's kind of like
Well,
their
the
whole
entire
act.
premise of their thing is staged, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. So yeah, but I think I'm pretty sure that when she does like the feedback videos and she reads out comments and all that sort of stuff, I'm pretty sure all of that is genuine. I'm pretty sure those are genuine people that are triggered by the idea.
Okay, God's vegan girl is saying it was real, so interesting.
Yeah, I'm fairly sure, because I don't know if she still does them, but once upon a time she used to do like the reviews, or like the people that left answer phone messages and that kind of stuff. And they'd usually be like people that were pretty pissed off about just the mere idea of this.
Oh yeah, yeah. God's vegan girl is saying my understanding is that vegans were pretending to sell dog meat. Well, that's the entire basis of
Yeah,
this.
that's literally the whole concept. Yeah, Elwood's is essentially a dog meat farm, and they use almost word for word marketing that any other kind of meat based sale would use. They use the same sort of spiels. They talk about
Yeah, high
everything in the
welfare,
same
free
way. The
range.
adverts are the same. Like literally,
Hmm.
it's just dog instead of whomever.
Yeah, so I'm still not sure whether that kind of last video was completely staged or not. In other words, they were selling their dog meat, which wasn't. I mean, like presumably it's plant-based meat that they've got on the grill or whatever.
I would imagine so. At one stage, they were doing like think you could essentially get their kind of promotional material, and you could set up your own stall. I'm not sure if they're still doing that. It might be interesting to actually have a read of the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. Joanna's saying that's the concept of Elwood. They are vegan. They are meant to wake up species. I understand that. I was just asking whether the last video where you see this guy kind of attacking their banners and stuff, whether that was completely staged as well, or whether that was real.
I mean, I don't know, because I actually, like I said, I don't know that for sure with that particular video and that particular episode. But I've seen almost identical things from non-vegans in the past, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was real.
It could have been real. We had a group near us, and what they did was they set up a kind of stall in the town centre where they were kind of roasting a a Chihuahua on a spit. Well, it was like a very realistic kind of model
Yeah.
of a small dog, like a Chihuahua on and roasting this dog, and they had people that kind of went mad, and they had to, they had to actually stop people from kind of, doing stuff, you know. But the thing is, if you don't have a chance to explain to people what it's all about, I think that very well could happen.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. One of my very first cube experiences, which was actually at New Street in Birmingham, it wasn't a violent experience, but there was two young lads that were very upset that we was showing footage on screens, and if there weren't security and police there very quickly, yeah, I think they'd have smashed a couple of the screens. That was what they were intending to do. They literally pulled them off the one lady's chest and were sort of like holding them up in the air purely because they were upset that we were showing this footage in public. And I mean, these weren't young kids. I mean, 15, 16, 17, that sort of age. But they were very upset. That's about the only time I can say I've ever had any actual confrontation. Like when people get scared or talk about, they're a bit dubious about going and doing any street activism because of aggression or anything like that. That's the worst that ever happened in any of the times that I've ever been out. I'm not saying there aren't instances, but they are very few and far between.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing, though, from a movement point of view, from a sociological point of view, is this effective? Because the idea is to trigger speciesists and then do a reveal, and then they go, "Oh, so it's not dog," and then they're supposed to go, "Oh, but it's just the same, if it were cow." Right. I wonder whether that last bit actually happens or not,
Well,
or whether if they do the
that's a
reveal,
key
they just
question.
go, "Oh, so it wasn't dog, so it's grand."
Well, yeah, I mean, the problem is as well. Obviously, the whole point in it being set up the way that it is, in exactly the same way that it was when we used to do the cubes, is you're looking for that reaction. You're looking for people to react to the footage. But unless they're going to have a conversation with you afterwards, that reaction's totally wasted.
Yeah,
Because
I'm just wondering how this is supposed to play out, because it seems to me that in a deeply specialist world, as soon as you do the reveal, that resolves it then for the person who was angry. Whereas the activists want them to then make a further step and say, "Oh, I see what you mean. This is the same as cow." But I don't know whether people do that bit or not.
I mean, obviously, Elwoods would probably be the best ones to ask because it's kind of their concept and they'd have the results. But I mean, certainly in my own experience, the screens that show any sort of form of what I would class as graphic footage, it's different if it's someone doing like a talk or something like that. Sometimes they get some interest, but the graphic footage, the success rate of conversations that come from that is really, really low. Like it just doesn't. I mean, sometimes you'll get people that'll be like, "Oh, that's really bad," but they'll walk off and they don't want to have a chat. Or you get the people that'll laugh and mock it. I mean, personally, in the last couple of years, but the last few months especially, I moved further and further away from using any kind of imagery in anything that I do. I mean, I cut it down to just using it in poems at one stage, and now I don't even do that anymore because let's be honest.
Sorry, I was just going to say that I think a lot depends on is any literature given out to people, who are angry or upset over the fact that they think someone's selling dog meat. It's
Yeah,
because
I think it's
I,
always. I
I think
think
to
they've
me,
always got people giving flyers out and having a chat as well. But I suppose the problem is
yeah.
if you've got someone that's pissed off, they're just going to screw that whatever you give up to them. They ain't going to read it
No,
because
it can't be like that. It's got to be. They've got to have in mind that there's going to be something like a three-stage process. They're going to be outraged, then the activists are going to do the reveal. Oh, this is actually not dog flesh, and then the specialist is going to be relieved, and then the idea would be to say, but what's the difference, isn't it?
well, I'm pretty sure that is how they work. But if they're already pissed off with you about the dog thing, and you don't even get a chance to explain that the dog thing isn't even real, then yeah, their reaction and their hostility is like there's nothing learned. All they're
Well,
doing is
if it just ends with them being pissed off and walking off, then you haven't achieved anything.
no, and that's what predominantly happens whenever and I'm not just talking about the dog stuff. I'm talking about any graphic footage.
I think there's an overriding thing to all this, though, and I think, it's probable that some people have become vegan because of this, and the bottom line is that at least this is people getting out there on the street and doing something and trying to turn other people vegan. And so I think that has to be seen against a situation where the vast majority of vegans don't do any activism at all. And I think that's always the backdrop to this. At least these people, we may have some concerns about, the effectiveness of this type of action, but at least these people are taking action. At least they're getting out there and trying to do something, unlike the majority of vegans, sadly.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Not knocking anyone for their particular methods or whatever. I'm just potentially talking about in my own experience now. I'm using graphic footage, even in videos, less and less, almost to the point where I don't use any now.
We've got a comment from someone. What are you going to do with all the rotting carcasses of animals in the fields? Presumably, like if everyone went vegan. And
outside your house, yeah.
There's a total misunderstanding of the process by which, change comes about.
Oh, I'm glad you worked it out as quickly as that, Ronnie.
Yeah.
I mean, what they were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to happen. I mean, basically, as more people become vegans, so demand for animal products will be reduced, and so the number of animals that are bred.
Okay, but let's answer it in this way, because we always get this, because people want to put the scenario, the kind of hypothetical, that everyone goes vegan overnight, right?
Yes.
And so that we must accept would actually cause a problem.
Well, I mean, it would cause a problem in terms of, what happens with all the animals. I mean, sadly, I think if everyone went vegan overnight, then all these animals would probably just be slaughtered by the industry. But it isn't going to happen that everyone's, there isn't a possible scenario where whatever we feel about it, that everyone's going to go vegan overnight. It's going to be a gradual process.
I like to think that if that was the case, and we had some magic wand that we waved and everyone went vegan overnight, that none of those animals would be slaughtered, because everyone that runs a farm or a slaughterhouse would now be vegan, and they'd be like, "Well, I'm not doing that."
If those people,
actually, all these farmers and everyone else have got a responsibility to look after all of these animals.
Absolutely. Yeah, if everyone
but it caused a huge logistical problem.
It would. But
if everyone if everyone like went vegan overnight, I mean, obviously everyone would include those farmers and would include the slaughter people and that. So none of that would happen. Though
everybody in our house would become vegan,
and the transport companies would be vegan, and the importers would be vegan. So everyone would help.
What would happen is those animals would be cared for the rest of their lives, but no other animals would be bred. No other farm animals.
That would be the most significant difference, wouldn't it? That the breeding would stop instantly.
Yes.
Well, here's an interesting comment, guys. What do you think of this? Vegan is respect. Why should vegans have to respond to ridiculous hypotheticals asked for no reason than to mock? Well, I think that some people do it to mock, but I actually think that some people, it's a genuine question for them, I think.
I agree. I think people don't think very much about it and probably don't understand, what's been going on in terms of vegan outreach and the fact that we have had a gradual increase in the number of people going vegan.
The thing is, though, Ronnie, this is just supply and demand. How come people generally don't understand the concept of supply and demand? Because it's so obvious.
Because I suppose the problem that we've got with most things in the world now is, unless that's your area, like let's say you run a business or you've
Yeah,
had
but
to
Andy,
learn.
how long do you have to think about it before it
Not,
dawns
not,
on you?
no, but that's the problem. Most people don't, unless they have a conversation like this, and someone kind of asks them to think about it. They don't. They really don't. That most people just walk around almost in like a bubble, just kind of thinking, right, I'll go home, I'll make the dinner, I'll feed the kids, I'll put them to bed, and then I'll do this, and then I'll go to sleep. And the few minutes of time that they get spare, they scroll through apps like this, and they don't think about things like that. They don't. I mean, the days of sitting around a table and having a chat about like how politics works or any of that, it's gone. And obviously, like the vast majority of people don't stand in pubs anymore, so they don't have these kind of conversations in pubs like they once upon a time did, or in social clubs or any of that sort of stuff. This don't happen. So, like, these people don't think about these things for the most part unless you have these conversations with them.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it's important to have that, to have these conversations. And this is, at least one way that people can engage with this, now that kind of so many people spend so much time on social media, that, social media can be used as a way of discussing it with people, I suppose.
Here's an interesting one from Gratola.
We've got Dougie as a guest request, so he can come on and explain his point about
Yeah,
rotting
okay.
corpses.
Well, Gratola is saying we should respect others' right to do what they want. I can guarantee that you don't believe what you've just written there.
Well, do we respect the right of paedophiles to kind of, interfere with children? Because that's what they want to do. So that's absolutely, it absolutely isn't true that everyone should be able to do what they want, and this so-called right of everyone to do what they want could be respected. Is it all right if somebody wants to go around, in the street shooting a load of people? All right, that's what they want to do. That should be respected. I mean, of course, that's not, of course, that can't be the case.
It changed things in North America quite drastically, wouldn't it?
Well, I think there's enough people going around shooting people in the street in North America already without that kind of...
I know, but if everybody else was going, oh, well, they're just doing what they want, so...
Well, yeah, because everyone's already got so many guns there, so it would be a pretty lethal situation, wasn't it? So no, what people are not able to do should be governed by ethics, shouldn't it? It's very important that we all behave in a moral and ethical way, towards one another and towards other animals.
Welcome, Dougie.
I'm allowed to speak. I thought I'd been muted.
No.
I disagree with what you said. Is it help about paedophile? You calling me actually saying I'm a paedophile or something because I eat meat?
No, I'm not saying it. No.
That's actually what you said.
No.
What I said.
Yes. You said it.
No,
I mean, come on, please.
No.
First of all, he was
Hang on a
a
minute.
different
No,
person.
that wasn't said. It was somebody saying that people should be allowed to do whatever they want to do. And I said, well, would that apply to paedophiles? Would that apply to people who want to?
That's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, how can you compare the two?
Well,
it's not
the comparison is between
of doing whatever anyone wants to do. Therefore,
and it was an example
possibility.
Yeah. Example of someone just saying, "Oh, if everyone was just allowed to do whatever they want to do, that would mean that paedophiles could be allowed to do whatever they want to do. People who want to kill other people could be allowed to do whatever they want to do. It's just the idea of everyone being allowed to do what they want to do is just not an acceptable idea."
Aren't you allowing yourselves to do exactly what you want to do?
No.
Regardless of other people's thoughts and feelings.
Well, I think, basically, people that consume other animals when that's not necessary, then they're acting regardless of the feelings of the other animals, aren't they? Because the thing is that nobody needs to consume animal products. We've got a choice.
It's a choice.
Right?
It's a choice.
Yeah, it's a choice, but
it's only a choice between certain morality. Now, a lot of people.
If you've got a choice.
Do you have an animal?
You've got a choice to live in.
Do you have a cat or a dog?
How is that relevant?
No, I'm asking you a question, and it will come on
that's not
later. It will come on
that's not
later on. In a minute, do you
that
have a
is not
cat or a
that's
dog,
not.
and have you ever had a cat or a dog?
Sorry, how is that relevant?
Well, we'll hear in a minute. I've just asked you a question.
No, how is that relevant? What I'm saying
We'll
is, if
hear in a
you
minute. Have you ever had a cat or a dog?
no, no, listen to my question
No,
first,
no.
right?
I asked you a question first. Have you
So
ever had a cat or a dog as a pet?
how is that relevant?
I'll tell you.
Explain to me.
If you
No,
say yes or
explain to me
no,
first. Explain to me first how that's
well,
relevant,
I
and then
ask
I'll
you the
answer you.
question. Can you please reply? Have you ever had a pet?
Why is that? Why is that relevant? Yes, but why is it relevant?
Have you ever had a pet put down?
How is that similar to
Wait, have you
animals
ever
being
had a pet
slaughtered?
put down?
Well, yes, and how is it relevant?
And did you use somebody else to put that pet down, or did you do it yourself?
No, somebody else.
Well, how can you then have this sort of argument
No,
unless you're
no,
prepared to do the job yourself?
it's completely
You,
different. It's
no, it's
completely
not.
different because that was done out of kindness to prevent the suffering of another animal. What happens with people consuming animal products? You see, we have a choice in what we eat. We can either eat in a way that causes slaughter or suffering, or we can eat in a way that doesn't do that. And if we have that choice, aren't we morally bound to choose the option that doesn't cause the slaughter and suffering? Why would you
would you
want
be
to?
would
Why
you
would you want to?
so no? What you're
Why
saying
would you want to?
are morals. You have yours, I have mine.
Yes, but what is right is, why would it be right? Why would it be right to cause other animals to be slaughtered and other animals to suffer when you don't need to do that? How is that right? How can that
In what
possibly be
way
right?
don't you need? I mean, I very rarely eat meat, to be honest with you. Very rarely.
The point is, we none of us need to eat any of it. None of us need to consume animal products.
But
So
please
therefore, if we do that,
don't bring morality into the question.
morality is
What's the
everything.
question of
No, sorry,
morality?
morality is the question, isn't
No, it's
it? And
not. People have
yes, it
different
is.
morals.
So your morals are that it's okay to kill other animals when we don't need to. Are those your morals? Is that your
But we need to
morality?
kill animals to
How?
eat.
Well, no, we don't, because we can
They will not. There's not enough land on the planet to be able to. If
no.
everybody went vegan, there is not enough land on the planet to grow this stuff.
Yeah, well, the point is a huge amount of crops that are grown are actually grown to feed farmed animals, and farmed animals graze on a massive amount of land. If we didn't have animal agriculture, we could feed people on just a fraction of the land that we currently use to produce food. So,
Okay,
in fact,
so how long will it
if everyone,
take
yeah,
for the world to get rid of every animal on it?
hello.
Yeah, how long would it take for the world to rid itself of animals?
I don't understand the
How
question.
do you mean?
How long would it take for the world to rid itself of
I don't.
animals?
That's not the idea.
Well,
It's
it
not to
does,
feed
because
themselves animals.
if you want to eat your fruit and veg, it must mean it has to happen immediately.
Well, no, sorry. What happens as people become vegan, as people switch to a vegan diet, then the demand for animal products would go down, and so
Oh,
and
Vegan
so
Rebel, why am
less
I
and less.
clueless? Come on the chat, Vegan Rebel. Come on, why am I clueless?
Well, let's just stick to what we've got
Just
here.
stick to, you're already speaking with a couple of vegans on here. Do you want another one as well?
Well, there's another one on here criticising me, so come on.
The point is, you see that there's one of the reasons we have the climate crisis, right? Is because so much of the planet has been deforested, because of course forest and woodland draws carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and the primary reason for that is animal.
Are you sure about this?
For,
Are you sure it's not to grow
don't
soy?
need to do that themselves.
Are you sure it's not to grow soy?
Well, even if it was,
80%
then
of
Deforestation
85%
is
of soil is being
responsible.
used to feed chickens and
Growing
pigs.
soy is one of the biggest causes of deforestation.
Yeah, but what is soy
Yes, and
used for is the question there.
For
80% of
vegans,
soy is
No,
fed
no.
to farm. No, 80% of soy is fed to farmed animals.
5% of the planet.
so you want deforestation all to yourself then?
What?
No,
So you want
80% of
deforestation
soy.
just so vegans can eat?
No, you're totally wrong. 80% of soy
Well, you
is
just
fed
said
to
it.
farmed animals.
Yes. So
80% of soy
once you get rid of the
is farmed
farm animals, will
So,
you give up? Will you then give up soy?
no,
Vegans would give up soy
people.
tomorrow.
Why?
If
Why?
made
Because it
people.
causes deforestation and global warming, doesn't it?
It's people who eat farmed animals that cause the
Look, okay.
vast
So you want
production
the
of
right.
soy.
So all the farmed animals have gone. So 80% is going to feed animals, right?
80% of
So
soy
that means
production is going to
100%,
feed farmed animals.
100% will go to feed vegans.
Yeah,
Yes.
No.
but
100%. So deforestation
I mean, even
won't
if we remove
stop
all of the quote-unquote
because
farm,
you want it for yourself.
non-vegans eat more soy than vegans by
Well,
maths.
this is really
Yeah.
warped language, and this is.
Look,
yeah.
come on, you can't.
Just by
Right, so there's
pure maths
80% go
alone,
to farm
even if
animals,
we
so there's
followed
no
your
animals, right?
example,
Let's take that.
non-vegans
So
outdo
deforestation will
soy.
happen to grow soy, so it will go 100% to the human population, right?
Right, which would then transcribe to about 95% non-vegans to 5% vegans, yeah.
But
There'd be
surely,
no, there'd be no.
deforestation is still going to happen
Why?
because you want to eat the soy that's grown on the
No.
deforestation.
What would happen? What would happen is because if everyone was vegan, because far less land would be needed to produce our food, we could allow a massive amount of land to return to forest, including the Amazon, including in this country we
Veganism
used
would
to have a lot of
create forest,
rainforest.
not take it away.
It would create forests because we don't need the land. We only need a fraction of the land. If we all lived on a vegan diet, we'd only need a fraction
Oh,
of the
come on, here we
land to
go,
feed us.
Gratola. Come on, I'm a hypocrite. Oh, yeah, I love judging murderers, mate.
Yeah, and I mean, all of this was only working on how we currently farm. If we looked at different methods of farming, we could reduce that land even more. But we don't try.
So how are you going to eat then if you reduce farming land? Remember,
No,
there's
because
6
you don't need.
billion
We
people on
could
the
grow
planet.
up rather
6
than on
billion.
grass. We could grow in
You don't.
towers.
You don't need. You don't need nearly as much land to produce food for a vegan diet as you do if people consume animal
What we're
products.
saying,
So we can
Dougie,
feed
is
the world
if all the crops
population.
that humans grow were fed to humans, that's then the solution to what you're talking about.
Okay, I'm open to that.
Yeah, and I mean, just to
Yeah.
put that in perspective, if we had no more quote unquote farm animals and all of that we were currently growing was suddenly used for human consumption, we'd be throwing 80% of it in the bin because we couldn't eat it. There's too much, far too much. So all of that land straight away could be reduced. Just straight away. Without even trying. And then imagine if we started factoring in different methods of farming, which like vertical farming, for example, or fermentation or anything else, which reduced the land consumption even more. Like, we've never tried doing any of this stuff before. We've just done the same things over and over and over again.
I mean, another factor, of course, is that it's always been part of the vegan argument that in a completely plant-based world, the people who are now currently starving, the humans, could be fed.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, what we do is we create feed for other animals rather than food for humans. And so that would also change. So in other words, even if you didn't particularly like other animals, a vegan world would create a situation where everybody on the planet, every human on the planet would have enough food.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big misconceptions a lot of people have is they think that there isn't enough food for everyone. The problem isn't food. There's an abundance of food.
It's where it's used. It's where
And it's a lot of the times it's the money. I mean, if you've got Western civilization that comes in and says, "Yeah, we'll give you X amount for all of it in one bulk," then the civilization of that little town or village or whatever it is that are growing it, they can't compete. They can't afford it. So it's not a factor of not being enough food. It's that there's not enough money. It's the economics that are messed up, not the actual
You know,
food waste.
actually, I think you're dead right there.
That's the problem with
I
all
mean,
these things.
I think what we need to start creating is sustainability, and using natural resource, as in wind, solar, even tidal,
Yeah.
which is fairly guaranteed,
Well, you are getting the argument for
rather than
vegans there,
burning
Dougie.
fossil fuels
No,
to.
that's absolutely true. But there is research that shows that the actual main contributor, there's an organisation called Climate Healers. Perhaps that's something you could look up, and they've done research that actually suggests that it's not the burning of fossil fuels that's the main cause of global heating. That it's actually animal farming, and the reason for that is, there's various reasons for that, but one of them is the amount of land it takes up that could go back to forest, and so could draw the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So that's interesting. I mean, it's a subject you're interested in, and you've got time to look at the
I am
Climate
actually very
Healers,
interested in that because
website.
I've got a young granddaughter. She's 2 years old, and I don't want her to be brought up in a choking environment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's right.
I suppose where I argue on this sort of things, it's probably fairly naive, but also I have to sort of look at it in so many different aspects. So I prefer to get the climate crisis solved first, so people are able to eat
Yeah, it's all part and parcel.
sustainably,
Definitely linked.
and then so we're alive to be able to do it. do you see my point?
Yeah, but you see, one huge way of tackling the climate crisis is to switch to a plant diet. That would make
why there's a controversy at the moment with the COP28 that's going on, is the fact that they're still serving flesh. That's actually caused a controversy because that's deleterious to what they're supposed to be standing for.
But and as I say, my what are they called? My way of thinking at the moment, very personally, is my granddaughter and my grandson being able to make the choice later on. Yeah, do you see what I mean?
Well,
So,
I think
so sort of veganism to me is sort of way down on the list of being able to, for my grandchildren to be able to
The way
breathe.
we would see that, Dougie, is that veganism is integral to everything that you actually want.
Yeah.
That's God, I hate to prove you're right.
You think,
I mean, the thing that I will say, mate, is once upon a time we were all there. Like all of us once upon a time saw things completely differently to how we do now. But yeah, it's all linked. It's all the same thing.
I think it's the responsibility of looking after the planet.
Yeah, well, the thing is, one thing that's important to understand, Dougie, is that veganism is a philosophy. It's about justice and non-violence. So anything that's unjust in the world, whether it's to humans or anywhere else, it's kind of like a vegan issue. So that's why it's all entangled. And
I actually look at, and this is no disrespect to you at all, it has to start with what humans do to humans, and then it starts to heal. Then you have to start to heal the planet.
Why does it have to start
heal the planet? Then we can look on certain things that can make it even better.
Well, can't we see the same thing? Can't we just do all of it at once, starting now?
No, I think and I think everybody knows the confusion and cynicism that's going on in the world at the moment. To be able to, we have to start. Human beings have got to start looking after themselves first, each other. Then we can look back. Then we can look at the climate crisis, and I do know there's a crisis.
Okay, well,
then we can look at the moral aspect. Not even the moral aspect. The very way that we can come together and say this is the way to go. And then gear it up from there. It might take 30, 40 years.
but we can still campaign on those things
Of course, I mean
and be
that's what
vegan
gives
at
us the
the same
right.
time.
I mean, these
Yeah.
platforms gives us the right to it gives you the right to campaign. You know, I'll never deny that.
Yeah.
Just to put in, I don't think that the oceans have got. I don't know about the land, but the ocean hasn't got 40 years.
Yeah, I know.
So we can't prioritize human rights for the next 40 years because we won't have a sea system anymore. So
Well,
No,
like
the
no,
we
it
idea
we
won't.
is
need
to
to focus on
prioritize
some of these
rights,
other.
not, isn't it? But there's no reason why we can't do this kind of hand in hand. Because I would say that one of the main, I mean, just look at what's going on in Palestine. One of the main problems for the family of humanity, say, is how violent we are, right? Well, that's it, completely tied up with vegan values about non-violence, about not exploiting others, about being just, about thinking about not profit but about justice, this kind of stuff. It's all for us, Dougie, it's all part and parcel of the same thing, that when we're fighting for veganism, we're fighting for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I think the reason why there seems to be more emphasis on the other animals is because of, the oppression of other animals by humans in terms of the suffering and slaughter that is caused them in terms of the numbers is massively greater in terms of numbers than the oppression of humans by humans. That all of them are things that vegans want to see an end to, but
Yeah, but Ronnie, you can't reverse it. Dougie says, well, humans first. You can't say other animals first
no,
either.
what I'm saying is the reason why the reason why people seem to think that veganism is just about the other animals is because that's where the emphasis is, and the reason why the emphasis is on that is because that's the hugest area of oppression and exploitation. That's what I'm trying to explain, why people tend to think, oh, it's just about diet and it's just about the other animals.
You know, I actually I understand what you're saying 100%.
Yeah.
But as I think I mentioned, a couple of minutes ago, it depends on the importance of the individual to look after their own. I wouldn't want to put anything on a 4 or 5 year old kid to say this is right or wrong. Where we have to stop. What we need is we need to stop first our hate for each other.
Yeah,
So
well,
then we can hold
that's
that.
what I said about 10 minutes ago. Dougie, let me ask you a question. You're a grandfather, is that right?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. So, and you're saying one of your grandkids is 5?
She'll be 2 tomorrow.
2, right? Okay.
Mm.
Let me ask you a question, and this is not judging anybody. Do you think that when your children had children, they didn't take any notice of the fact that there's like a growing ecological crisis already? And so, I mean, like if the climate crisis thesis is correct, then your grandchildren's chances of becoming adults and having children themselves is fairly slim.
I think they'll probably make their own decisions. I mean, as I say, I'm not actually a very great meat eater. I'll have meat, well, I don't know, twice a week.
No, that's not the
A lot
question
of
I
the
was
time I'll
asking.
have noodles and pasta because it's
Yeah,
quick and easy.
I mean, you're obviously concerned about the climate situation, but it's interesting that human beings are still having children in this climate emergency, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, but we have to have children as well. Otherwise, where do we stop?
Yeah, so I'll take this down a slightly different route. So you sound like a decent guy, Dougie. I'm assuming you're not oppressing other human beings. You're not dropping bombs on anyone. I'm assuming you're not robbing anyone or mugging them or
No.
beating them up in the street. So in regards to like what you said, like we got to fix the human stuff first. You personally are not contributing to most of these things, but you are contributing to the animal ones, the other animal ones. So that is something that you could change straight away. I mean, I totally agree with you. What's going on in the world, war, genocide, all these things absolutely need stopping. But like That's a big part of why I'm vegan. I can't single-handedly stop famine by doing anything other than being vegan. I can't stop war and oppression in other countries by doing anything other than being vegan. I
That
can control my own personal decisions and my own personal impact, but
that
the
that's
greater
very, very
impacts and the
true.
greater
But
injustices.
but for all of us to be able to hold hands and go forward, we need to start looking. The human beings need to start looking after human beings. Then we can hold hands, go forward,
Yeah,
solve problems.
absolutely agree. But what I'm talking about, if you personally are not contributing to any of these human wrongs, then the ones that you only the ones you are contributing and can directly do something about are to other animals. I mean, absolutely, that Israelis need to stop bombing Palestinian children. Absolutely, but you're not doing that, and I'm not doing that. So there's limited things that we can do to change it, but we can change other aspects of our life and other impacts that definitely do cause oppression in other places.
But would it be horrible for me to say what I feel in my heart about what's going on in the Middle East now makes me cry?
Yeah, I mean
Um,
that
yeah, but unfortunately,
understanding is kind of like
veganism at the
just
moment
expand it.
doesn't.
Just expand it. That feeling of injustice, that feeling of kind of like, I don't know, knowing that this oppression and this kind of barbaric sort of murder and genocide is going on, and that this is real, and like this is somewhere else in the world. Yeah, that oppression and stuff. That's exactly why we're vegan, because we feel that for everyone. It's not just potentially the people. Everyone is the same, regardless of
Yeah,
their
I mean,
species.
if we look at the situation in Palestine, everything is linked because you've got human suffering, you've got other animals being killed as well, and then you've got the environment being completely smashed up by warfare, which is a major contributor to global warming. So all of those things are intertwined. It's not a question of one at a time, it's a question of all at a time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a clash now, isn't it? It's a clash of all sorts of morals and the way we are stopping everything now.
Well, I would say that the core to it is our values as human beings. And if my argument would be, as a vegan, that the more vegan values we could get in the world, the better it would be, because vegan values are based on non-violence, justice, and peace. I mean, veganism as a social movement was born in the last years of the Second World War, and they saw themselves as part of the peace movement. So veganism stands for peace, but not just for humans, for everyone.
I mean, it's quite weird that the first time I ever heard about a vegan was at about 1985, and I think that's because of the availability of media, not social media, obviously,
Mhm.
but different newspapers and that. It's like, hold on, what's
Well, I mean,
veganism? You
like
know,
if
and
you go back to
it's actually quite it was
1976,
quite a very it's a very very new thing to a lot of people.
yeah, it's a question of your knowledge, and because, for example, there was a thing on the BBC which was very influential. That was 1976. The actual movement that we are now part of was born in 1944. Like I say, the last years of the Second World Wars. So there is a longer history than most people know. So I grant you that, as it were.
Yeah, that I never realised it went back that far.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, don't worry. You know you're not alone. Most vegans don't realise it went back that far.
Yeah, and one of the first things that they wrote about was human famine.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously, going back to what Roger said, at the time when the foundation was formed, and especially when some of the first issues of the Vegan News came out, the Second World War was still ongoing. It hadn't finished, and the things like the Holocaust that we now know all about, they were finding out in drips and drabs. So like all of this was really prudent. All of this was really pertinent and like literally significant to the time. And yeah, they cared about the issues exactly the same.
Okay.
Can you imagine about learning about concentration camps and the Holocaust in real time
Yeah,
rather than
in real time, not
yeah,
Oh yeah,
just
no, I
on
already have done.
Wikipedia.
I already have done, and it's absolutely horrific.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Watson, one of the founders, was a conscientious objector. He literally went without for what 18 months because his rations were docked because he opposed the war.
I mean, it was. I mean, a lot of people don't know that the Holocaust started about 34, wasn't it? Or was it a bit later, 36?
Something like that, I think. Yeah.
You know, and Yeah, it's not something that's widely known. Everybody thinks it happened in 1939. This is where history gets confused. And in 1944, you'd think, well, that's when the Allies were moving through Germany. You know, how does this veganism all start? You know, on the back of that.
That what you've just said is what amazes me all the time. You've got people that not only said I don't like what's going on, but they're like, we're gonna come up with a solution. We're gonna put our heads together and come up with the ultimate peace movement. Whilst the whole world was on fire, they're like, no, we want peace, and this is how we're gonna try and obtain it. Like, yeah,
Yes.
I think it's incredible. It's what inspires me all the time.
But
One of the interesting things about veganism is that they argued that because a lot of the pioneers of our movement saw both world wars, and so they'd seen these global conflicts in fairly short order, and they thought that humanity had kind of gone into some kind of form of savagery or something, and
Yeah,
they thought we need to elevate humanity back out of this moral trough, and they thought that veganism was part and parcel of it, and so they argued that veganism was part of the moral evolution of humanity, which is what their position was. That if vegan values came into the world, we would have a much less violent world. Humans would be a much less violent species.
I actually understand that. It's a case of we have to start somewhere.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess our start though, Doug, I suppose, is veganism, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. Just have to emphasize that really is the sort of starting place for everybody. Your own personal actions are the one thing that you've absolutely got control over. We all wish that we could click our fingers and stop bombs being dropped and bullets being sold and everything else, but we haven't really got any control over that. But actually,
Yeah,
our own
I mean, it's
choices.
heartbreaking that you know, you click into Democracy Now, see what's going on in Palestine day after day after day. There's nothing that we can do, us three here. We can't do anything about it, but we can do something about it, about the oppression of other animals right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's been quite enlightening for me to talk to you both tonight.
I know. Thank you for
You
joining
know, you've
us.
given me quite a lot to think about. Um,
Well, I'm glad you came on, Dougie, in the end. So,
Yeah,
yeah, you know,
absolutely.
sorry that I was a bit belligerent in the
No, don't
beginning,
worry.
but
Don't worry. You know,
you know, um, it's just when you're faced with certain things like morality and stuff, it does tend to, um,
it's an emotive subject. Absolutely.
yeah. But anyway, I'm going to let you go, and thank you so much for being here. Basically, thank you.
No, you're welcome. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
See you later.
Bye bye.
That was very interesting.
actually, where Dougie started, it got me into real trouble in the 1990s because I was trying to do what Ronnie did, which was kind of talk about the mindset of the perpetrators of harm, and they couldn't see it anything other than you making comparisons.
Yeah.
And so I was saying, no, I'm just talking about the mindset
Yeah, yeah.
of
It can be very dangerous grounds, especially
yeah,
when
it is,
children are
yes.
involved.
It's a difficult
Absolutely.
one, isn't it?
Yeah. But no, I mean, going back to something that I said to you privately, I think a couple of weeks ago now, the one thing that I have noticed, as terrible as everything that's going on in Palestine and Israel is, I have noticed this proof of understanding at the very least that people know what oppression is. They recognize it, they see it, they can call it out, and those are the words, and that's the language that they're using. So this whole, going back to our original sort of subject of the night, carnism thing, thinking, well, we need to water down veganism because it's too big an idea, it's too broad a concept for people to understand. That's just piss. They absolutely understand justice, as we've seen with the various dog campaigns, whether that's Millions and Marshall or whether it's the XL bullies at the moment. And they absolutely understand oppression, as they're proven with what's going on in Palestine. So the idea that they're too stupid or not sophisticated enough to understand this language is not only incorrect, but it's actually, it's quite ableist and offensive. They absolutely can understand this, and there's no reason for us to dilute and water down our message, none at all.
Yeah, well, obviously, I agree with that. Absolutely.
The amount of non-vegans that I've seen that talk about oppression in the right context, that completely understand the definition of the word, how it extends and everything else, and it's just speciesism, which is the problem. Yeah, that, people absolutely do understand this language. We don't need to be talking about cruelty all the time. We can talk about oppression. They get it.
Well, I mean, in a way, it's a weird form of elitism, isn't it? Oh, you can't understand things like speciesism and oppression. We've got to talk to you. We've got a baby talk to you about cruelty.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, one of the things that I would sort of suggest everyone has a look at is when you're looking through these various news reports or sharings at the moment about Palestine, look how many times people use the word cruel to describe what humans are doing to other humans. And if you're not seeing it, then that should maybe start you think maybe I shouldn't be using it to describe the actions of humans to non-humans. Because if the word isn't strong enough for the media, then it shouldn't be strong enough for us.
Yeah, it's interesting. You've got a kind of interesting historical take about the word cruelty, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to what we was just mentioning on briefly with Dougie, if we go back to some of the original vegan issues, a guy called Dougald Semple, he literally wrote talking about World War II that they were finding out about the cruelties that man could inflict upon other men. And, you know, we would never, I mean, I would never describe what's going on in Palestine right now as cruel, same as I would have never described as what was going on in Ukraine before that as cruel. Like this word wouldn't seem significant enough. It wouldn't seem like it did justice to the description of what I'm telling you about. But
So,
yeah,
so it wouldn't now, but it did then.
yeah,
You're
but
saying.
80 years ago, that's something that was written about. So a lot of this use of the word cruelty back then, even though it was nowhere near as prominent as what it is now, the word actually had a much stronger connotation. I mean, it did
It's
the word
interesting, isn't it,
cruelty
Andy?
then.
Because I don't think I've seen anybody on either side to describe Hamas as cruel, what they did on that particular day when it sparked all this shite that's going on, and nobody's said that the Israeli response is cruel. I
No,
don't
and
think.
I actually think, I mean, obviously there's no way we could test this, and I wouldn't even want to suggest a thought experiment because it would be really inconsiderate. But if there was a news article released tomorrow that said, I don't know, Palestine treated cruelly, I think that would be challenged by most people saying, what? Like, this is pathetic. This doesn't describe the event. This, I think that they wouldn't be happy with that language. So yeah, I think when we look at it in those ways, we shouldn't be using these words because they don't depict what we're talking about, and people absolutely do understand the proper ones.
Paul is saying he gets the flesh issue, but what about cheese, eggs, etc.? That bit I don't. It doesn't make sense to him. He's saying.
Well, essentially, I mean, well, you can just keep the sort of thought of flesh in mind. So the egg industry automatically means the maceration or the drowning or the suffocation of baby male chicks because they don't lay eggs and so they're essentially expendable. And the dairy industry, the same kind of applies to male calves because they're expendable too. Whereas the females kind of get pushed into the same system to be like mum, a lifetime of being exploited until they're too tired to be exploited
Yeah, well,
anymore.
which is also a form of expendability, isn't it?
Yeah, and then they're sent to the slaughterhouse too. So all of these animals, eventually, whether they're the laying hens that most of the time don't go to human consumption, but go for things like companion food, cat, dog food, that kind of thing, all of these animals eventually end up in the slaughterhouse. So they're all flesh industries, regardless.
Do you take the line that I've not heard this for a good while, but I used to use it, which was the fact that like, as it were, a dairy light flesh consumer is probably causing less animal suffering than a dairy
I would,
heavy
yeah.
vegetarian.
I mean, if you want to look at it in terms of we do a tally chart, then yeah, absolutely, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
and that,
I've seen the point argued before that sometimes if you were to sit there and tally it up in terms of rights violations, and it would be a tick each time, that if some vegetarians actually have a worse impact than some non-vegans, like
yeah, well,
just
that's usually the argument because I suppose if you had to choose, do you want to be a broiler chicken or a layer? Well, you're going to say, well, neither of those is what I choose, but I suppose the ordeal of the broiler chickins is
yeah. I
over
mean,
in a matter
I've
of
I've
days.
literally got a poem that says I wouldn't want to be either, but if I had to pick, I'd be a male chick because
Yeah.
it's over in a day. I
Well,
don't get
less
used and
less than a
used
day,
and
isn't it?
used.
So
Yeah, I mean the
Yeah.
idea of essentially being used until the point that you've got nothing else to give and then you're sent to your death. Yeah, I think I'd go with the day old maceration. I mean, neither are
Yeah,
great.
that's because I always talk about the industry term of spent, spent cow, spent hen. I mean, basically means worn out. It's as though you buy a car and, sling the car into first gear and just put your foot down until the car is broken.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know, it's kind of, well, I mean, like it goes back to Animal Machines, that famous book, whereas they are really regarded as, well, there's two things. They're seen as machines, production machines, and they're also seen as units.
yeah, yeah.
Paul is saying free range then. Well, we wouldn't go for that either. We would go for well, we go for veganism, obviously.
Yeah. Well, my free range analogy that I often tell that sometimes upsets people because I make the human comparison is imagine that you take a liking to a sex worker on the street and you decide that you're not happy with the way that they live and what they're doing. So you take them away from the street and you put them in their own apartment that you pay for and you furnish it and you make sure that they've got some nice clean clothes. But you continue to pimp them out. Instead of them being on the street, they now work out of this apartment. So their environment is great. They've got a roof over their head, their bills are paid, they've got comforts, but they're still being used by you for sex work. That's the equivalent of a backyard hen. So the treatment is better and the environment is better, but the exploitation absolutely remains.
Is that the plot line of Pretty Woman, whatever it's called, or not?
I don't know, is it? I've never seen it, but that's the example that I often use. Yeah.
It's all gone quiet.
And that's essentially Tobias's symbiosis. I will look after them, and therefore, in exchange, they will give me eggs.
Yeah, I suppose the kind of vegetarian, the free range, the kind of, because I mean, obviously, as we know, we don't help ourselves as a movement by kind of pushing people to think that way. But the people think, well, oh, okay, well, if there's something that's cruel,
Yeah,
what's not cruel?
of course, yeah. If you think that the kind of ethos of veganism is an anti-cruelty movement, then of course you're going to think about, why isn't a backyard chicken okay? Because your brain is taking that word cruel and trying to eliminate it from the equation. It's not thinking about animal use. It's thinking about cruelty. So if we take them out of the battery cage, or if we take them out of the mass inside of a huge chicken shed, or if we make sure that they've got their own little bed and they've got their own place to live, then it's okay. Like this is exactly what happens when we talk about cruelty. Yes, they try and look for a nicer way to do the wrong thing because we're not telling them that the thing's wrong. We're telling them that it's cruel. So we're describing the treatment of the process rather than telling them about the process.
Yeah, people used to come up to the stall in Dublin and they would say, oh, okay, so what meat can I get? Or which type of egg should I get? Or which type of cheese should I get? Right. Because they were having that mental kind of
Yeah, and
calculation going
you
on.
can absolutely understand why people would come to that thought process. It's kind of makes sense for the vast majority of people. I mean, going back to the early vegan issues where they talked about cruelties against other humans, the RSPCA obviously existed, but they were pretty small time. Whereas now the RSPCA, for example, in England, a huge marketing budget, huge advertisement budget, like pretty much everyone who has heard of them at some point, even if they have never used them. And they now essentially own the cruelty line. They are in charge of being the anti-cruelty movement. Cruelty automatically, for most people, brings the RSPCA to their mind. So that's what they're looking for. They're always going to think about treatment. So when you talk about we don't do this because it's cruel or it's animal cruelty, straight away for a solution to that, people will look at ways to avoid the cruelty without thinking about use. And that's a problem that we would definitely have going forward, and it's up to us to address that because it's not the non-vegans' fault if that's the conclusion they come to, because that's the way that the language suggests. It's a logical path to follow.
But do you think, Andy, then that explains why the modern vegan movement seems to be very confused about groups like the RSPCA?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I mean, if you constantly talk about cruelty all the time as like your kind of number one go-to word and you're a vegan, then yeah, of course, when you see like the adverts and stuff pop up from the RSPCA where they've got like adverts that they've got the word cruelty with a cross out, you're automatically going to be triggered by that thinking, but you do this, you put your stamp as though they're a vegan organization because that word has associated you. But they don't claim to be a vegan organization in any way, shape or form. And it's the wording that matches, which I am aware of, I do know that's the problem. But it's, yeah, they don't see it for what it is. They see the words as matching and think that the RSPCA should have vegan principles, as opposed to seeing the words matching and thinking, I don't want to say the same things as you. You're
Yeah,
essentially...
well, Dana is saying we are an abolitionist movement, not welfare. But the problem is our language is welfare. That's what causes the confusion.
Yeah, it is.
And then I don't talk about veganism and politics in a work environment because I would lose my job. Really?
I suppose it depends on what you do. Yeah, some people have to sign like NDAs and things where they're not allowed to talk about anything.
Veganism and politics?
Although I'm not sure why veganism would be banned. I mean, I can half understand some political subjects being iffy, but I suppose it depends on what the job is.
Actually, it's funny, thinking about kind of Palestine, I wonder whether there's kind of like, notice going up all over canteens around the country going, don't talk about the Palestinians. Well, they wouldn't call it that, would they? Don't talk about the war in, what would they call it, the Middle East, I suppose, wouldn't they?
Yeah, probably. But to be fair, from what I saw, especially at some of the like the football grounds and stuff, from some of the TikTok videos and some of these other big events, everywhere where they've kind of made a thing of saying, please don't wear flags or please don't wear colours, they've gone above and beyond to wear flags and colours. It's kind of like had the opposite effect, which is good to see too.
Okay. If I told my co-workers they are rapists and murderers, I would lose my job. Well, that's not necessarily the best thing to say.
To be fair, I can kind of understand. I can understand that, but yeah, that's not the language that you need to use because, I mean, for the most part, they aren't those things. Even if you want to put those terms onto what happens to the other animals, they aren't necessarily the one. Well, for the most part, in fact, aren't the ones actually committing those things. They aren't. They're just paying for it to be done. So they're not actually. I personally don't use those terms even to describe people that work in those particular places.
It raises the kind of very difficult issue about artificial insemination because the farmers, right, will argue that AI is used on welfare grounds. Now, there is some degree of truth in that.
That is true, yeah. I don't know where it stands from, say, like an RSPCA legislation stroke policy point of view, but certainly from the point of view in the sense that these cows are so big now that, yeah, it could cause serious damage, if not death, for a bull to mount because of the size of them. So yeah, from that welfare point of view, absolutely, that's why AI is used, and also taken into consideration if the bull is too big that they're going to cause damage to the heifer, then imagine what they do to a person. So yeah, that's the welfare aspects, because one of the things that a lot of people don't think about, and I suppose I haven't talked about this loads, but I've mentioned it a few times, is animal welfare legislation is only about 30% put in place to actually look out for the animals in question. The rest of that legislation usually is pushed because it's protecting the workers from that environment. So things like debeaking, as much as they are to protect the birds from other birds, they also protect the workers from the birds. Same with declawing, dehorning, all these things. Yes, there's an element to protect the other animals, but actually it only needs a couple of isolated cases anywhere in the world where someone gets gorged by a horn, where, yeah, they're going to dehorn every other animal from now on. Like, this is how a lot of these things work. It's to keep the workers safe. That's what pushes policy far quicker than anything else. If there's an injury to a worker worker in an environment that they think that they can do something going forward to prevent, that's exactly what will happen, regardless of what that means to the other animals. Their welfare will be sacrificed for the human workers at every available opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, Cranston Jones, who brought up that thing about getting fired, said, "Okay, if you were the animals, how would you want me to talk?"
I'd want you
Well,
to talk, well, straight away, I'd want you to talk in a way that wouldn't get you fired, where the
yeah,
conversation was actually going to move forward and you'd actually have some success.
yeah. I mean, if you use language is going to automatically get you fired, then you haven't got anywhere.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would say that if you made the case and propounded the case of animal rights, the philosophy of animal rights, suggesting that other animals are rights bearers and that what we do with them is a rights violation, I would start there and see if we could tease out an understanding from your co-workers about the issue of rights, about where the scope of rights, about animal rights and human rights. I think that gives you loads of kind of avenues of interaction and discourse. Whereas if you said you're a rapist and a murderer, it doesn't seem to get anywhere.
No, there's nothing stopping you using descriptive words, and there's nothing stopping you talking about things that are emotive. But you'd be much better off talking about what's going on in Palestine and making that comparison between there's no difference between oppression than calling someone a rapist. You know, if you want to go down the controversial road, then there's plenty of examples you can make that are relevant. But I just don't think that insulting someone with something that's not even accurate is the best way to go.
Do you remember the time, Andy, when Joey Armstrong said that he'd stop using the word rape and that kind of stuff in terms of artificial insemination, and that what he would do, he would describe the process, and often the other person would say, "Oh, blimey, that sounds like..."
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. It's very similar to what we do with the H word. If you want to talk about something and then they come back with you and say, "Oh, that sounds just like this," then yeah, absolutely fine. Talk about it. They've brought it up, but I don't lead with those words.
Yeah, it's interesting though, isn't it? You know, the H word, as you call it, is it's an interesting one, because if you say animal holocaust, that's not talking about the Holocaust. And so there's a real kind of battle of ownership over this word, right? And so that's what becomes very difficult about it, because there's been, as we know, several human holocausts. None of them have been as large or as long as the animal holocaust. It's just that as soon as you start using that word, people, you know, this is there's a sociological discipline called ethnomethodology. It's about the way that people hear things. People hear the Jewish Holocaust when you say the word in any context, right?
Yeah. Hi, Cranston. They wanted to join, so let them on. I am here. I'm just literally going to go and get a drink. So if there's a bit of background noise, I apologise.
I'm here. You guys can hear me fine.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Is Cranston the right word to use?
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, no. That sounds like something out of Superman to me.
No, it's just a random name. I don't know why.
Oh, right. Okay. It's your adopted
Forever.
name. Okay. So do you want to say something, Cranston?
I kind of just wanted to, I guess, my thing for advocacy for the movement is always from, if we can guide people to empathize more than anything else, that's the goal, like to put themselves in that position. Because if we do it from a human perspective, so like say we're Palestinians, you know, like we see the kids screaming, crying, yada yada, and if we do that from, you know, the animal's perspective, it's vastly worse. It's, time immemorial. I don't know what I can really. So, like with the coworker issue, I actually did say this to a coworker because they were saying they're slightly vegetarian or whatever. Um, and they were bringing up, I was like, if I had kids and they decided they were going to eat meat, that would be akin to be like, your kid had just become a rapist or a murderer. And I said that because that's how we as vegans feel, because we know that's what's happening. And they were so shocked and like struck back that I was like, shit, I'm going to lose my job. So I was
And
like,
did they complain about what you said?
no, no, no. They're very progressive leaning people. So I was lucky. But I was like, fuck. Okay. Sorry. Like, I'm a very direct, like, you can hear it in my tone. I speak very directly and matter of factly. So I was like, okay. So
Yeah,
blah, blah,
well,
blah. Rape, murder. That's what we
mm,
see people as. But we don't see you as that unless you're educated on the facts. We don't go around being like, oh, that's what you are. Or like, well, we'll say you're an animal abuser or whatever, but we don't, because, it's 37. Oh, well, it's 4 years for me now. So since I was 33, like I had no clue, like COVID happened. I went hard left. I didn't know I was doing everything wrong. And then, you know, went vegan after watching Game Changers because I didn't want my sex drive to fail. And then I realized that if I did that for health, I would give myself cheat days. And then I watched Dominion, and then I was like, oh shit, I can't. Yeah, I just can't.
yeah, but going back to talking to others, your workmates or whoever, um, there's an interesting concept in sociology which is called recipient design. So, because we're kind of like skillful social animals, and that we can, generally speaking, kind of, have respectful discourse between each other, generally speaking, it means that we tend to frame what we say with the recipient in mind. And so the only thing that we would say then about using that kind of language that you started off with is that, is that going to be conducive to a further conversation, or is that just going to cause them to be shocked and walk away?
You would also have to know that person, though.
Well, yeah, but that's part and parcel of it because we're skillful social animals. We
Yeah,
can,
but you wouldn't like, even though we're skillful social, we don't like that relationship is getting better and we're at a really good place. And I really like this coworker.
hmm.
Um, there, but I do feel like that interaction totally like probably it hurt it a little bit, but they're very understanding because of where they are on a political spectrum, and they understand like even with themselves that they are may not be privy to like everything, so they're like, okay, maybe this person is talking with a degree of like, you know
Okay, well, here's a question then. Would you repeat that or think twice next time?
um to another person, a brand new person,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
somebody.
Yeah, somebody in the same circumstance when they're talking about being a vegetarian and their kids and all that.
If okay, so if it happened again, I did think I learned it, but like I told you, I speak so very matter of factly that I want to get it in, and I'm not very experienced with advocacy, so I'm still learning. But this was a teaching moment for sure, and
Yeah, but
This time,
you're a human being. So you know how to talk to other people.
that you can't say that about everybody though. Not everybody has the same social skills that I do. You know what I mean? Like you can hear it. Like not everybody has gone through the same thing. Everybody has anxiety, mental health issues,
Yeah.
especially in this
Okay.
lovely
So that
country of
makes sense.
America.
Are you saying you've got developed social skills, or your social skills are lacking?
I'm saying I'm extrovert as opposed to people who are introvert leaning.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So with that understanding, you will be able to shape your talk with those kind of ideals in
We
mind.
wouldn't know that though. So if like say in an advocacy scenario, like let's say I'm out on the corner saying, "Hey, how do you feel about this?" You know, if I can gauge from their body language and stuff that they're more like introvert leaning, sure, I can gauge that and be like, okay, so you know you were responsible for this, right? Blah blah blah, you know, yada yada. Um, but
I mean, did you hear our exchange with Dougie before?
I kind of just came in, and since you're one of my friends on here, I just brought myself in, and it was like I wanted to hear and talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, Dougie came on. He was fairly belligerent, and when after 10 minutes, he was kind of saying, "Oh, I was sorry, I was a bit like that at the beginning," because we just kind of talked to him, and we were fairly kind towards his position and stuff. So I still think, again, as a sociologist, that we tend to very quickly, as social animals, suss each other out, pretty much.
Hmm. My it would be, you know, like you said, like if they came in aggressively, I would probably act a little like, hey, you know, take a second, chill, you know, like
Hmm.
this is where I'm coming from, you know, this is what we're doing here, blah blah blah. But if it happened again for your question,
Hmm.
I would probably like, so the question was if I had kids that decided to eat meat after raising them vegan, that's akin to having somebody who's essentially a sociopath and has no ability to regulate right from wrong.
Well, I would say
Because on
culturally,
a human level, that's what would happen. But
well, yeah,
because it's on an animal, we see them as lesser. So,
yeah, culturally, that's not quite correct. But in terms of the words that you used and you talked about, in the chat before you came on, you recognize them as very triggering words, calling people a rapist and murderer, right?
yeah, I use extremes because they get results.
And what result do you think you achieved?
They were probably traumatized, but not for necessarily the good. I know one of,
Okay, let me stop you there
but I,
then.
but I,
So,
but I don't know. You know what I mean? Because
well, you just said they were
I'm
traumatized, but
not
not for
them.
the good. Is that a good outcome?
Trauma doesn't necessarily mean bad in my like mind. It just means you remember it. You know, like you remember that.
Are you using the word trauma to be the same as shocked?
I mean, I guess. Um,
So how long ago was this conversation?
not even a month ago.
And what's sort of like as the
We
subject?
talk. We talk is good as ever, but we don't. I don't engage anybody about anything unless they ask me. And once they ask me if they really want to know, I'll let them know. But I caveat that with anything. So if they ask me about this, I will tell them, like how I feel and all of the, sense about it and data, whatever. But we talk all the time. It's like one of my closest work friends. And I've only worked there a month. And if this person didn't work there, I'd probably hate working there, to be honest.
But have they sort of like, advanced any of their thinking since your conversation? Did the trauma have the desired
Oh
effect?
no, not even remotely. It had zero effect.
Okay.
In my like little time frame that we're talking about, no, it had like zero effect.
Yeah, but that begs the question, Cranston, whether your choice of language was caused the fact that it hasn't had an effect.
It had a bigger effect on me, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I was just about to say that. So we've had this discussion, numerous times before, completely aside from this one, where we talk about some of the big YouTube videos that you see where they're very controversial and you've got like an exchange and then it's like, oh, see you, you're animal abuser. Now the vegans, they love this, right? They love this kind of material. But that person doesn't walk away and think, yeah, they're right. I'm an animal abuser. I'm going to go home and change their ways. They walk off and think, what a dickhead. Like typical vegan prick. There's no connection there. They don't walk off and think, I'm going to go and change my ways. They walk off and just think, arsehole. There's kind of nothing to it. It's great from a vegan's point of view, and there's that drama that kind of everyone likes to relish. But in terms of an education point of view, kind of nothing gets gained.
It probably was gained on my end for sure. Like I was saying, like I
Yeah, so
realized
as a like a
immediately that
learning
I
curve.
shouldn't have been that extreme with that person. I think with maybe a more aggressive person, but this person isn't like that. They're a very fragile person, if I can say that.
Yeah,
They're
no, I totally get it. I mean, so I've been vegan 10 years this January coming, and like I started off for probably the first 3 or 4 years, very kind of forefront and not, I don't want to say aggressive because it's not aggressive, but aggressive in the same way that I suppose people describe Joey Carbstrong as aggressive, i.e., don't back down from a conversation, more than happy to describe things as they are. But as time's gone on and on and on and on, I've massively changed my approach probably 4 or 5 times because it's kind of like new information, or you kind of assess how things are going, or how conversations last, or what, even if you manage to sort of break through to people, what's the longevity of that? Are they sticking with it? Are they continuing to learn, or are they just doing it sort of like a fire by night thing? All that kind of stuff, and it's kind of like sculpted my approach going forward. So I do totally understand where you're coming from. But the vast majority of people will never accept information if you insult them, regardless of whether you are telling the truth or not.
yeah, but I didn't directly insult
I mean,
them.
it's easy for
But
us
they
to
might
have
have
these chats
perceived it as
because
that, but I
we're
was
all on
not
the same
like,
page.
you are this.
Yeah, yeah. I
But
mean,
no, yeah, they
I totally
definitely
get
took
it.
it that way.
Yeah,
But
I totally get
I'm
it.
a bit confused. Maybe you can clarify. Maybe it's a lack of understanding on my part. But you've just suggested that the person you were talking to was very fragile, and yet you were using these pretty aggressive words. I don't.
but you got to remember, this isn't a month time span that I'm learning this person. And because I know they're very progressively left, as in like communism, as in like they believe in a lot of the stuff I believe in for human rights. I've, felt akin to this person. So I might have, been more apt to be like open to, and I'm from a very, my
Yeah. So that comes
background
back.
is like my dad was military. So that's why I speak so matter of factly.
But it comes back.
And
It comes back to my question to you again. If you could have your time over, would you change what you did?
oh, yeah, 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 for sure. But I wouldn't know exactly like, the terms. I mean, I guess I could have used, like essay or like sexual assault or like your act. It's not even you are because they don't know that they are. You know what I mean? Like we didn't know that we were. So it's like it's just kind of finessing that, and it's from a lack of experience. Like in my advocacy, I want to, and it's very, like we only have such finite time here, right? So we're trying to get everything right. We're trying to, and for me, this is just how I've been, is like this cannot, that like, so I told this person I would never date somebody who um fishes, is a part of a rodeo, is, like goes to zoos, or, like these are hard no's for me in terms of relationships. And they were like, kind of, even from that, they were like, oh, that's so weird. And I'm like, okay, well, if you know about horses, horses aren't meant to be ride, they're broken into being ridden. And then the same with like X this, X that, and these things. And they're just so like, oh. And now it's just a matter of like awkwardness because they've never even thought about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but did they respond by saying, "I would never date anybody who calls my kids a rapist and a murderer"?
Wait, what do you mean?
Isn't that what you were saying that you did? No.
No, 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 no. I was saying, oh, okay, so I mean, I guess essentially, but I wouldn't call my kids that. I guess I would try to get them rehabilitation, but essentially, if they go from this to that, there's a very wrong thing here, like serial killers aren't born, they're bred. You know what I mean? They're from their circumstances. That's not like,
Yeah. Okay.
oh,
Well,
hey.
sorry about that. I think I must have misunderstood what you said originally. Then.
Yeah. No, no, maybe, I'm not sure. Sorry. But so they asked me, I told them, I would never let my kid eat meat, because if I raise them vegan, because it's not a personal choice, it's a moral imperative. And they were like, they didn't, really understand that. And I went on to tell them and elaborate. So if you understand what happens in these industries, cows are this and people do this, like for profit. And they were so like shocked that I said those words that it just totally like, you know, kind of just killed it.
Yeah.
That I feel like, there's not like a barrier now. I feel closer to this person than ever. They confide into me. They confide in me things that they don't confide into other people. So it's kind of it's a real weird situation. And like I work in a sex shop, like I'm dealing with people who are, full of color and happiness and all this other stuff that I've never experienced before. But, like we were talking about this because it's something I'm passionate about. And they said they were vegetarian. I was like, okay, well, and, they asked me for like a recipe advice or whatever because they're soy. They're not able to eat soy. One thing leads to another.
Well, Andy, I'm quite intrigued by the line. I work in a sex shop, but I need to go now, so I think I'll have to say good night to everyone.
Yeah,
So,
that's fine. I was only going to go to 11 anyway.
yeah.
Just to sort of like end things or whatever. What I would do is I would potentially, if you've got this kind of close relation, just sort of ask the question of, do you understand why I'm as serious about this as what I am? Do you actually understand what it entails and sort of what it actually encompasses? Because I think most people, when we're not trying to take anything away from anyone, we're trying to make the world a better place. It's for their benefit as much as it is for the other animals. So sometimes just trying to explain it on that level is like, look, I am as passionate about this subject as what I am because of the fundamental wrongs that's going on. The fact that each one of us individually can make a simple few changes in our life that have an absolutely astronomical effect on the rest of the world. Like this is something we can do overnight to change. That's why it means so much to me. It's the difference between life and death for so many.
Yeah, and this person that is my coworker is a type 2 diabetic. So, if I was to go on a diatribe about how if you stop eating eggs and dairy, you might actually come out of it.
Yeah.
It's like, my thing is the job. that's my priority.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
The
like,
best way, in my experience, to address topics like that is to just sort of say, look, I'm never going to tell you what to do, but why don't you have a look at researching this particular topic? Like, can diabetes be cured with a plant-based diet, for example? And you tell me what you think. I'm not going to tell you it's right. I'm not going to tell you it's wrong. I'm just going to tell you that this information potentially exists. Go and have a look at it and see for yourself. That's all you can do in those situations sometimes, especially when it comes to people's health. Like I've got a friend who I literally wish would listen to me for exactly the same reasons, but won't. So I get it. I do totally understand. But that's all you can do is just keep planting those seeds and being like, oh, that's funny. I watched a documentary about that particular project the other day, and you just give them a link or whatever, and you just plant the seeds that way.
yeah,
People are far
it
more
does.
likely to change something if they think that it's, you know, it's for their benefit as opposed to you're taking something away from them. That's the problem that most people have with this concept. They think they have to sacrifice something that's theirs rather than looking at it from a completely different viewpoint of it was never yours to begin with. You're just not taking it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, really, really nice to meet you and really nice to chat. Thank you everyone that's joined us tonight. I am going to knock it there because it's 11 p.m. here, which is when I was going to finish anyway. But you're more than welcome to join. I don't know if we'll go live tomorrow, but we're definitely live if we're not before Saturday night at 8 p.m. I don't know what time it is there now, but we're at 11 p.m. here, so it'll be 3 hours before this on Saturday at 8. If you're around.
Sounds like fun.
But yeah, otherwise, thank you everyone. See you later. Take care.
Have a good night, guys. Thanks
And
for having me on.